Dear students, let us start the discussion on today's newspaper, that is 9th January 2017. The first article is Revisiting a Passage from India. It is about the Indian diaspora and how can they contribute and how they are contributing to the Indian prosperity. In this case, I will say having a strong diaspora across the world will definitely help a country strategically and economically. If you take India itself as an example, the India-US nuclear deal, it went through because of the effort put forward by the Indians or Indian diaspora in the United States of America. If you take the Jewish community in the United States, in almost all the Western capitals, that have remarkable presence in the political structures over there, and they are hell-bent to protect their interests back in Israel. And then if you take the China, People's Republic of China has significant presence in Southeast Asia. During Deng era, the state has transformed itself into a capitalistic structure, and Southeast Asian population or Chinese diaspora has helped the China to create the new markets or made the China a hotspot for the manufacturing sector and got its significant place in global supply chains. And today, the Portuguese Prime Minister has visited India as a guest, and he has his roots in Goa. And he clearly states that India Portuguese relations, he did his best to enhance them. So, what the diaspora is expecting from the government, that is due recognition. Especially today in the West Asia, there is a lot of instability and economic downturn because of the low oil prices. So, the Arabianization of the jobs, the sectarian violence is increasing over there. So, that is providing many hardships to the Indian diaspora, and they expect a help from the government to protect their rights. And second thing is, there are many island nations where Indian diaspora has raised to the positions of the heads of the government. But when these governments are toppled, Indian government kept itself distant from the diaspora. If you take about the Fiji, when the government toppled there, India did not intervene, saying that it don't like to intervene into the internal affairs of the other countries. But this appears changing during the Narendra Modi's era. And finally, if our diaspora has to make a strong impact in their adopted land, they shall be unified, and only identity that has to guide them is their Indianness. So if they are divided on the basis of other identities based on religion, caste, etc. in the foreign land, obviously they cannot put forward the Indian interest with the strong voice. And also they can become the victims of majority population over there. So they can become the easy targets. In this case, the government of India also shall see them as individuals that can promote or that are connected rather than just from the economic dimension. That is what this article talks about. The slowing of economy. The Central Statistical Organization has released its new set of data. It clearly indicates that the GDP and GVA, these are going on a downturn. And the worst part is, it is happening in spite of the good monsoon. The mining, manufacturing, services sector, everything is on a downturn. And demonetization factor is also taken into consideration. In the next statistical data released by CSO, the situation can be much worse. So, how we shall deal with this? Obviously, the banks are in full float with the money. So, the cheaper interest rates to an extent will push the investment cycle. But however, private investment is not very keen because of the policy instability. And demonetization also has killed the consumer demand. If it has to be raised, the fiscal benefits are necessary for the private sector. So the prime pumping or fiscal stimulus the government has to think over if the economy do not revive in the next two quarters. And coming to unclogging of cities. If you remember the Indian cities, one thing which you can remember easily is the traffic. It is due to unplanned growth of the cities and also increased vehicular population and underdevelopment of the public transport system. What are the various innovative systems that were tried across the world? Already Delhi tried with the odd and even system, but it did not impact much with regard to the vehicular pollution and congestion of the roads. And in London, Newark, and also in the case of our Goa and Puducherry, they impose something called as congestion charges, pedestrian only roads. In Puducherry, actually, they have the pedestrian only roads. It means no motor vehicles are being allowed in that area. In the peak hours, in the business districts, if the vehicles are being allowed in London, these are charged heftily for the parking. And in that case, why can't we do the same thing in India too? The conservatives, they argue that it will hamper the business and it will dampen the traders' interest over there. But in reality, people who are walking, they does more shopping and benefits the traders and business than the allowing for the vehicle population. So, the fact sheet shows that the interests of the traders will not be affected because of the pedestrian only roads. And other things is developing a public transport and also local mobility. These are the other factors that need to be associated with pedestrian only roads. And finally, this experiment, if it can be implemented in all the metropolitan cities, to an extent we can see the first right to the citizen on the road, that is to the pedestrian, being protected in this country. Now, let's get into time for a political solution. I will say that the time was never so good for Sri Lanka to solve its ethnic conflict. You all know the origins of the problem of ethnic conflict in Sri Lanka, where it stands today. Today, the major issues are revisiting of the Sri Lankan constitution and changing that from a unitary to federal and also presidential to prime ministerial government. With this aim, a national unity government has come into power with the Sri Lankan Freedom Party and the Ranil Wickremesinghe United National Party. But however, though it is not visible outside, the political expediency or else political matters appears to be worsening between these two parties. And the second thing is, the returning of the land to the Tamils, which is under the control of the military, is not going at a faster pace. And reconciliation, as the part of the reconciliation, the justice is due for the Tamilians who have faced the war crimes. Previously, there was huge international pressure on the Sri Lankan government to deal with the issue of the Tamilians. But today, as the China is making its inroads into Sri Lanka, India and United States, they are more concerned about economic blockade of China into Sri Lanka rather than the human rights concerns of the Tamilians. And also the Ranil Wickremesinghe government is more focused to the protection of the economic interest and expansion of the trade ties rather than looking the constitutional issue as the primary matter. And finally, what I can say is the political solution is necessary now because the only opposition is Tamil National Alliance, and it is very much cooperative with the government, and it is in a wait and watch mode to promote for or to provide for autonomy to these two regions, and this opportunity shall never be missed. And looking towards a greener future, this talks about green bonds. In this case, what is a bond? Let's take Exim Bank. It will issue the bonds from investors, and these green bonds, through this, it will collect the money from the investors on a promise that whatever the money they are investing, it will be used or spent or loaned only for the green projects. This Exim Bank will provide these loans to the various renewable energy or environment friendly projects. So in this case, the first major problem is, yes, green bonds are being oversubscribed in India. The S Bank bonds are subscribed more than 3.2 times. Exim Bank bonds have been subscribed more than twice. And then the bonds have to go to the renewable energy. The major problem is most of the companies in renewable energy, These are not big companies. So what is necessary is a kind of an aggregation between them. And also these people need assurance that that money comes back to them. It means securitization of the loans which they have given for various green projects, and aggregation of the companies to make the bigger companies. This will create a huge impact. So this is looking towards a green future it talks about. And then coming to this article authored by the superpowers, I frequently tell to the student, after 1991, global politics can be better called as the politics of good governance. World Bank, IMF, and various international aid agencies, they are interfering with the politics of different developing countries in the name of good governance. So here, there are many proofs that the West has used its capital or power of the capital to sway the opinions of the people in their favor. So to sway the elections to their benefit. This is what the Russia did in the case of the United States now. So how many times the Russia and USA has intervened in the elections and democratic functioning of the different governments of the developing and developed world is a classical example through these statistics provide for. Then let's go to the next page. So army enthused by the new indigenous artillery gun. Just remember what is the name of this gun. And then Public Accounts Committee Urjit panel has to reply to that, the RBI governor. So try to study about what is the Public Accounts Committee. These are the static areas which I don't want to talk to you in this video. And coming to the other aspects, that is Pravasi Bharatiya Divas is happening in Bengaluru. You know that it is the day when Gandhiji has returned from South Africa. And he has after successfully testing his weapon, that is Satyagraha. And the Indian diaspora, what are their major problems? With regard to the Indian origin card or IOC card, so this card is not being given to people who do not have the roots clearly delineated, or means they need to have the family tree to give the Indian overseas citizen card. So in this context, people from many countries where they went as indentured labor during the British era, they do not have this family tree clearly with them with established proofs. So for them also the Prime Minister promised that he will find a way out. And then coming to business, the most important thing is GAR, General Anti-Avoidance Rules. So it was going to come from 2017. What it states is, whenever there is any arrangement between two business entities, two individuals, a business and individual, and if an authority feels that it is for the tax avoidance, then he can question the arrangement and he can impose the tax on that particular arrangement. Now, it is the part of the individual. For example, if he asks that, what is your arrangement with that individual and I don't consider is appropriate, then it is my liability to prove that that arrangement is not for the tax avoidance. Today, the liability is on the government officer to prove that the arrangement is for tax avoidance. It has been reversed and the liability is shifting to the people, which is going to raise the power of the tax authorities. So, that's what we need to talk about. And let's come to the questions. I have given the questions to you. And then try to answer these questions. Or think on your mind how will you frame the sentences for these questions if you are a fresher. If you are going for the interview, just make your opinions before a mirror. Yesterday I made a video of our former DGP Mr. A.K. Khan, who was very cooperative and friendly with us. How to prepare for an interview. I was so surprised by Sir that he was so connected to this interview process and to this exam. I mean, it was so amazing. And his inputs are really effective because I made a questions before going to him. For example, what are the leadership questions? How they are starting analyzing the existence of leadership qualities in an individual. How compassion is being evaluated. So then he gave the beautiful answers, what he will be looking into a candidate based on his experiences. And I want to post that video soon but we need to do small editing to that. And thank you very much for following these current affairs. I want you to gain from these current affairs. And coming to posting in the morning, yes, I have got a hectic schedule out over here. So I was unable to post in the morning, but as soon as possible, I'll get back to that schedule. Thank you very much. All the best.